When I was managing the Pentagon renovation program, I spent more time in conference rooms with various people solving problems and behind computers looking at building information modeling systems than I did in hard hats.
Hello, I'm Laurie Shuster, Editor-in-Chief of SWE Magazine. Welcome to Diverse, a SWE podcast. Today we're exploring the world of construction management and breaking down the myths that might be keeping some engineers, especially women, from seeing this as a field where they can thrive. Our guest, Carol Holland, PE, is a certified construction manager and executive with more than 25 years of leadership experience in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. She is the chair-elect of the Construction Management Association of America's Board of Directors, and she wrote an insightful In Focus article for the spring 2025 issue of SWE Magazine about changes in the field of construction management. Carol, it's great to have you here. Welcome to Diverse.
Thank you for having me, Laurie. I am thrilled to be here and to share my passion for construction management with your listeners.
That's great. To start out, could you introduce yourself and share what first drew you to the field of construction management?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm Carol Holland, and I've been doing this work for longer than I'd like to admit, sometimes 25 years more. I started in the Navy. I'm a professional engineer and a certified construction manager, and I'm also a lead accredited professional. And I've had the privilege of leading some incredible projects over the years, including the Pentagon renovation program, the International Monetary Fund headquarters renovation, and many, many more. My journey into construction management really began in the Navy, where I served in the Civil Engineer Corps. You know, that's sort of the design, construction, cradle to grave facilities management arm of the United States Navy, a very small corps. I worked on construction projects around the globe, and I discovered something really interesting. I love not just the technical engineering aspects, but the orchestration of bringing them together and bringing together diverse teams and managing complex logistics and seeing massive infrastructure projects brought to life and seeing their positive impact on people, the end users. So what really drew me to construction management was the realization that this field sits at the intersection of technical expertise and human leadership. You're not just solving engineering problems, you're managing relationships, you're coordinating among various stakeholders, and you're leading teams through incredibly complicated challenges. So after my Navy career and all of the different roles that I've been able to have, I knew this was where I wanted to focus my civilian career.
Boy, you use the word orchestration, and I think that's an excellent term for the role that you play as a construction manager, because as you said, you have to know the technical side, but you're also trying to integrate all of these different roles and steps in the process. I can imagine that takes a lot of concentration and a lot of diligence.
It's very humbling at first. A lot of people come into the field and they think that their job is going to be very technical. And, when you're managing widgets or you're managing pounds of steel and yards of concrete, it does sound like it's something that's very kind of cut and dry and technical. Mm-hmm. But then you realize that the next door neighbor has a noise restriction. Mm-hmm. That means that you have to do that work after hours, or that some of your staff are being impacted by labor rules that cause you to change the way that you phase the work, or that the work looks a lot less complicated. And then when you start digging into the ground, you find unforeseen conditions that make you have to stop and rethink the work. Right. Then you realize that what you're doing is not just technical, but it's really solving problems. And how do we solve problems? It's with people. The other thing about our work is that it's the number of stakeholders to build a major program, even a minor program, is enormous. You have the general contractor and all of his or her subs. You have the designer, and the designer is going to usually be multiple firms that come together, an architect, a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, sound engineer, traffic engineer, usually different firms that are coming together to produce this one coordinated set of drawings. But you have the person who's funding the project, that could be the owner. You have the end user, and you have maybe intermediaries between that funder and the end user that are translating. So just think about all of those different people and all the agendas. You realize you're not managing just a technical solution. You're really managing and collaborating among a wide variety of people with different agendas.
Boy, that's a lot of juggling. I wonder throughout your career if you've encountered any myths or stereotypes that you've seen around the field that might be preventing engineers, especially women, from pursuing careers in this sector.
Yes. I think there's several persistent myths that hold talented women back from considering construction management. And I think they are outdated. Let's go through a couple of them. I think the biggest one is that construction management is primarily about physical labor, or that you need to be on a construction site swinging hammers. And I think a lot of people have, for their own purposes, they've proliferated that particular myth. And the reality is that modern construction management is increasingly about digital collaboration, strategic planning, and systems thinking. When I was managing the Pentagon renovation program, I spent more time in conference rooms with various people solving problems and behind computers looking at building information modeling systems than I did in hard hats. Now, we were on site, in the field every single day, 2 shifts a day, 6 days a week, not 7. Wow. But even right there in proximity to the project, we were poring over our digital tools to really understand what coordination and conflicts we had and how to deconflict that work, and working together to figure those things out. Another stereotype is the boys club mentality, and that's the idea that construction is inherently unwelcoming to women. Now, I think that stereotype has a little bit more truth to it than we like it to have. And I won't pretend that those challenges don't exist. I would never want to tell people to come into a field and pretend like it's going to be all rosy. But I do think that it is progressing. We were moving from the way it was when I started 25 years ago. The industry is actively seeking diverse perspectives, because what we've learned is that diverse teams simply perform better.
Right.
When you're managing a big project with all those different stakeholders, like we talked about before, you really need every possible viewpoint to identify risks and to create innovative solutions. I was on this large project several years ago, and the general contractor did something really cool. They had a kind of box that you could put your ideas in. So you're on the project every day. You might be a laborer, you might be a carpenter, plumber, electrician. You come in every day, and this big project that's going to take years to finish, seeing some repetition. They had this idea to say, well, that's the person who's going to know the best way to solve this problem. And just understanding that you need to hear from every person involved in getting the project done. So I hope that we're breaking down that boys club mentality. Some of that is going to require people in positions of leadership to really lead the charge to not tolerate that boys club mentality. We cannot just sit idly by while we watch people feel that they are not in a safe space to be their very best selves. And then we're going to ask of everyone to be resilient and to not give up. And if those of us in a leadership position are doing what we're supposed to do, we'll kick those doors down, and we will sort of break down that boys club mentality. And then I think there's a misconception about what is construction management anyway? We're just following blueprints and schedules. But as I said before, it's really very sophisticated work. We're using digital twins. We're using integrated project delivery methods where all those different stakeholders are working. Not just the general contractor doesn't come in after the design is finished. They're bringing construction management knowledge. The construction manager is bringing their constructability knowledge into the design process. You're seeing cloud-based collaborative platforms that allow people to see in real time as the project moves forward. And the skill sets that we're looking for are skill sets of financial acumen, of stakeholder management, of risk assessment, and risk management and strategic thinking. Those are all areas where I believe women tend to excel. And then I'd say the most damaging myth is that there's no career advancement. In my experience, the opposite is true. The industry faces a significant leadership gap as experienced professionals retire. And you're seeing that right now. And plus, we're seeing this huge increase in the amount of work that needs to happen in order to accommodate our bold future that we're looking forward, a future that is more sustainable and that solves the needs of all of our people, not just in the United States, but around the globe. So we need people, and that's creating rapid advancement based on performance and not just tenure. So
it sounds like there's a wide range of skills that are needed in this field and that engineers could bring from a variety of engineering professions or disciplines that they may be practicing in right now. I wonder, as you have gone through your career, have you encountered certain biases or roadblocks with the good old boy network that you've had to overcome? And can you share maybe one example of how you managed to overcome that?
Oh my gosh, yes. About 6 years into my career, after I completed my master's at Berkeley in environmental engineering, and I was assigned to become the department head of the Environmental Fire and Safety Department for Navy Construction Battalion Center in Gulfport, Mississippi. I had not yet reached 30. I had my PE. I had a master's degree. I showed up at that spot, and there was a lot of misgivings about my leadership of that department, not because I wasn't qualified. I clearly was qualified, but because a lot of people just did not anticipate someone of my age and my education. And by then, my experience, I'd spent 5 years in the Navy doing environmental work, construction work, and a little bit of design by that point, just a little bit. So I remember having to fight. It was really a struggle to be allowed to do the work that I was able to do. I had to empower myself because there were people who wanted to relegate me to smaller roles. I would come to meetings and people would be like, oh, well, you can take notes.
Oh, geez.
I'm the leader. I know, right? And I know that this still happens to us.
Yeah.
It happens to women. I will say, as an African American woman, happens to African American women. Walk into a room and people anticipate that our role is administrative. I've also seen, not myself, but others, when I worked with some superintendents in the field and they had a junior office engineer come join. And office engineers are typically coming into the construction field having completed a civil engineering or maybe a construction management degree, not even civil, typically an engineer. One of the best office engineers I had was a woman who was a mechanical engineer. But I remember her boss is the superintendent. We come into the office and I think we were doing a initial inspection meeting for one of their subs. And her superintendent looked at her and was like, well, can you get the coffee?
Oh,
She probably had the most experience with that mechanical sub of anyone in the room with her background. And that's how he treated her. So you have to break that down. You have to sort of push against that boys club. And then I will say, when I was at the Pentagon, I remember having to work against the kinds of stereotypes that would want to lead towards, oh, well, why don't you stay in the office while we go out and do this work in the field? Just how they understood that you were there in the office to do this work, but they would sort of relegate the types of duties, sometimes thinking that they were protecting you because the work was hard and heavy. And you just really can't allow them to not allow you to do all of the aspects of our work, because that's how you get knowledgeable about the entire process.
Sounds like you really have to stand up for yourself and push back. And I wonder, now that you've worked in the field for more than 25 years, how have you seen it evolve? And what are some of the realities on the ground that might surprise people?
So I am an optimist, and I do believe in a good in people. And I also believe that people are focused on outcomes most of the time. And so what I found is that when they see these positive outcomes of these teams. I have seen people transformed with partnering, for example, where a lot of times in construction, especially as construction has evolved, as the legal process of managing construction projects has evolved. We started out years and years ago, and with fixed price contracts, we started out in very adversarial roles, and contracts were written to assuming that there was zero trust between designers and owners and contractors and construction managers and architects. And those silos that we were in that forced us to be less trustworthy really resulted in higher costs and, kind of some bad behavior. And as we have evolved and learned that we need to rely on each other, I have seen these partnering sessions that happen at the beginning or midway through a design that bring the owner, that designer, that general contractor, the architect all into a room, that identify project objectives that everyone uses as their North Star when they're trying to make decisions about the right way to go. It leads to better outcomes. And I have seen those facilitated partnering sessions transform people's ideas about the possibilities of working together. So I think that's one way that I'm really excited about the way that the world has evolved, the culture of construction management has evolved. And I would also say, obviously, and I think we might touch on this in a later discussion, how technology has really helped us analyze and predict problems a little bit better and move towards solutions a little faster.
Well, let's talk about that because you mentioned the new technologies that are being used. I wonder when you are working with others in your field or with people that you're supervising, what are the skills that you're looking for, both in terms of the new technologies and in terms of the, more collaborative, people-focused skills?
Right. I think a technical background is very helpful to begin with. And I would always welcome all of our Society of Women Engineer members, all construction management degrees, all architect degrees into the construction management field, because being trained in a classically technical degree gives you problem-solving skills that I think really come in handy as we are moving our projects from design to operation and maintenance and sustainability. My background is systems engineering and then this environmental engineering master's. I don't remember taking any psychology classes. Most really does come down to non-technical management. So I remember working at the IMF. We were renovating their 40-year-old at the time headquarters building, HQ1. It was 13 floor, brutalist construction built in I guess I would have been around 1960s, 70s. And it had a kind of construction that obviously asbestos was still allowed, possibility of lead in the building. And we had to renovate the building while it was occupied. The other thing about it was that we really needed to understand the mission of the IMF. And I will say parenthetically, one of the most important things about being in our business is to really understand the mission of your owner, their mission and their needs, their risks. You need to really understand them in order to develop good processes. We sort of missed a little bit of that. We didn't really understand the culture. We understood the mission, but not the culture of the IMF. The swing plan that we've developed for swinging them out and then back into the space did not comport with the culture of the IMF and how they worked. They worked on these horizontal floors and they had this very specific way of working with one another. But the existing HVAC systems served in a vertical way.
Oh boy.
So we wanted to swing them out kind of vertically and we couldn't. We had to swing them out horizontally. It changed how much swing space we had to procure. It changed how we tackled these different systems, which were served from the roof down, from the basement up, and they served different segments of each floor instead of one floor at a time. And it changed how we addressed asbestos remediation. It completely transformed that occupied renovation project. And we had to lean really heavily on non-technical skills, on collaboration, on seeking first to understand, on building trust, on communicating and community engagement to rework and rewire that project.
Boy, it really shows how understanding the needs of your client from the start and, like you said, what their culture is can really impact what you design and the way you design things to work. That's a really great story.
This is true of every single client you will ever have, every owner that you'll work with, whether you are an engineer on the project or in the construction management. Let's say you work for public schools. Well, one thing you know about public schools is they usually don't have a lot of money and they must be open by the day after Labor Day. Is not negotiable. So when you're thinking about putting together a plan for them, you know that you're really going to put your client, your owner, in a terrible position if that school doesn't open. It helps you to think about priorities and decision making when you really understand what's very key to your client's mission.
That makes sense. No pressure, right, when you're working for schools.
No pressure.
Well, I'm curious now what you think the future of construction management looks like. What gives you excitement when you look forward, maybe 5, 10 years from now?
Yeah. There's so many great things that are happening in our industry. As an environmental engineer, one thing that I'm really, really excited about is resiliency that we're starting to build into our systems. There's so many new construction materials that engineers and construction managers are devising in academia, that we're learning about how we can build a little bit more sustainably, not leaning as heavily on unrenewable sources, the materials, and how the materials are built. I would say sustainability is one of the most important and exciting things that we're doing. I think another area, let's just talk about AI. One of the things that's on top of everybody's mind, I think that AI has the potential to not just help us with the mundane. I think AI is best used, at least in this iteration, is to work on the things that are mundane, repeatable, and super important tasks, like taking minutes at meetings, how important it is for us to all be on the same page when we're having progress meetings. And I can tell you that those progress meetings are referred to, unfortunately, in claim situations. They are very important in terms of direction that's been given and the time that has been given. And when you don't have timely progress meeting minutes, then it can really impact the overall success and communication on the project. And so using AI to automate things like that allows these incredibly highly trained construction management professionals, engineers, to focus on the things they were trained to do instead of, did I get those minutes right? I think AI is going to have the ability to really be a force multiplier for us. And that's, starting from the beginning. We've talked a little bit about digital twin, the idea of envisioning a completed project before you have spent one dime in construction is so important. One of the interesting things about construction is what makes it unique in the technology sector, right? Is that we don't create a billion iPhones that are identical until we make the newest revision. Every building is unique. Even if we take the same design and site adapt it someplace else, it might have different foundation needs. It might have different weather.
Right.
So it is a unique situation every single time. Digital twins and any kind of information modeling, 3D modeling, 4D and 5D modeling, so modeling in time, putting in all of the information of the asset into that model from the very beginning is so powerful to us having a better understanding of how it's going to work in the field. So digital environment. And now then we start talking about construction. During the construction stage, all of that moves into the construction stage. And then also we have things like the augmented reality so that we're sort of envisioning and deconflicting. You'll find in construction, one of the biggest things you're working through is deconflicting the various systems that need to be placed in the space, usually at the same time. And then also we have drones. Drones have already been employed in amazing ways to improve safety. So now we're not having to send an inspector or even a worker into situations. We can use drones and robotics to get into those more dangerous spaces, confined space, for example, and high spaces, for example. And then project management, predictive maintenance systems, real-time optimization tools that allow us to fundamentally change how we approach our complex projects. And I've talked a little bit about sustainability. And then I would say the topic that we're talking about today that gives us a lot of hope is our talent opportunity. The industry is recognizing diverse perspectives drive better outcomes, and it's creating better pathways for advancements that simply didn't exist earlier in my career. I'm seeing women and other underrepresented groups moving into leadership positions a little bit more quickly because organizations understand that diversity is a competitive advantage. I think our infrastructure needs are massive in this country. Our transit needs, our housing needs, our needs to improve those things where we do have good infrastructure are super important. And we just need more people in the field. So I'm just really encouraging people to consider it. It's a wonderful field.
Well, given that, before we wrap up, what advice would you have for women engineers listening who might not have considered a career in construction management until now and who might be, excited to do so now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I congratulate you on listening to the podcast. The Society of Women Engineers has been a real important part of the ecosystem for women in technical fields for several decades now. I am very grateful to SWE and their members for all of the work that they've done. I know that I've been personally and positively influenced by the Society of Women Engineers. So very proud of the work that they've done. And I'm proud that you're taken the step to listen to this podcast. I think organizations like SWE and CMAA, Construction Management Association of America, are here to identify pathways, to provide training, and to provide a network that I wasn't even really plugged into when I was a junior engineer, but that network that helps you have some foundation, some reference points for how to move forward in your career. So what I would say is, don't let those outdated stereotypes limit your career possibilities. The construction management field needs exactly the kinds of skills that many women engineers possess. Your strategic thinking, your collaborative leadership, and clearly your resilience, your problem-solving creativity, and your system analysis, all of those things are critical in this workspace. So if you have an engineering background, you're already ahead of the game. The technical foundation gives you credibility and insight, and it's invaluable in construction management. But what makes you truly powerful is combining that technical knowledge with the broader business and leadership skills that construction management requires. So I encourage you to reach out to our organizations and look for these organizations that are actively committed to diversity and inclusion. Most importantly, trust your instincts about leadership. The construction industry is evolving towards more collaborative, inclusive approaches that create opportunities for different leadership styles. But don't feel like you need to fit into a traditional mold. The industry really needs these fresh perspectives and innovative approaches. And the timing couldn't be better. We're facing unprecedented infrastructure challenges, and those challenges require creative solutions. I looked it up a couple of months ago, and the Census Bureau is identifying by 2030, we'll have about a 500,000 person gap in the number of people we need in this industry facing this multi-trillion dollar infrastructure work that we're going to be doing over the years. So we need everybody, all hands on deck. And I couldn't imagine a better team of people to help us solve these problems than the listeners to this podcast.
Well, thank you, Carol. This has just been a fascinating discussion on all of the many professional skills that are employed in construction management, as well as the new technologies that are helping people to do those jobs and the different viewpoints that are needed and are going to be needed in the future. I really appreciate your being here with us today.
Well, thank you so much. It has been a blast. Invite me back. I'd be happy to come. And thank you to your listeners. And I look forward to hearing from you all soon.
Thanks so much. For our listeners, the In Focus series in SWE Magazine features leaders from discipline-specific professional societies who discuss the trends in their professions and the opportunities presented to women in engineering and technology. So I encourage you to read Carol's In Focus column in the spring 2025 issue of SWE Magazine, where she dives further into these topics. You can find that at swe.org/magazine. I'm Laurie Shuster, and from all of us at SWE, thanks for listening.